lot of words that you can use to describe the Corvette program, but probably the one that works the best is innovative. Corvette has long been the test bed for new technologies at GM, and the designers are always pushing the look of this car into the future while preserving its link to the past. Marketing the Corvette also requires an innovative approach. This effort involves harnessing the energy and the excitement that is already built into the car and channeling it in a way that makes the world want to talk about it. One of the very best ever at doing this was our second inductee into the Corvette Hall of Fame, Mr. Ralph Kramer. Ralph's Corvette story began in 1973 when, as a reporter for the Indianapolis News, he went to cover a speech at Purdue University given by GM President Ed Cole.
And I was struck by how I could tell the instant he deviated from his prepared remarks. When he stayed on message, he was great, followed right through. When he got off, he was moving around, stammering, he was getting off subject. So I went back and wrote a little story about how it's too bad that the president of General Motors was obviously not a good speaker. A couple of days later, my editor called me and said, "Hey, I got a GM guy that wants to have a meeting with you." And I really thought I was going to get fired, actually. This was in '73. They offered me a job as a speechwriter at General Motors.
Ralph's natural skill as a communicator and a relationship builder, along with his drive to make things happen, helped him move up in the company, eventually making him the PR director for Chevrolet. Being a Corvette fan too, he was now in the driver's seat when it came to telling the world about America's sports car.
He was such a die-hard Corvette fan. He really understood how much Corvette meant to General Motors, not just as a car on its own and that it be successful, but how much it meant to General Motors to have a brand like the Corvette that was so important to customers, so important to the racing community, the performance community, and customers in general. He really understood that well and really wanted to help promote the brand in a way that would help General Motors, and he was really good at it.
I met him and learned very quickly that he had the ability to handle the press very effectively. He had the gift of gab to talk to them, get them on his side, and to be able to express the qualities of our products. And then when Jim Perkins came in, who's also a very personable person, the two of them were a tag team group that you couldn't beat. We'd go to press release where we'd show the new cars off to people, and Kramer would lead the parade and Jim would come in and just finish the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, the legend lives on. I'm very pleased to present the beautiful 1 millionth Chevrolet Corvette.
I would say that he's the best product presenter, the best person to handle the press I've ever seen in my life.
Well, Ralph Kramer was part of Jim Perkins' staff, and certainly when we were doing the 5th gen Corvette, those were critical times. But I remember how Ralph would command the media and a lot of presence up there, telling the story about what we were up to with the all-new 5th generation Corvette.
Well, Ralph decided that he would present to the magazine writers conceptual drawings of C5. I wasn't really in favor of that. What happens if they don't like it? What happens if they leak that out to the public? And that could really be devastating to our entire program. Ralph said, "No, Russ, don't worry." He said, "I will tell them that if they ever leak it out, they will never write another article for General Motors in their time frame in the history." So he presented the plan to them, the concepts. They were elated, and all credit to Ralph. There was not a single reference in any magazine about C5 design, and that gave us a good yardstick on the vision of our design of the C5, and we would have a successful reaction from the public.
In Corvette's darkest hours, when it was on the verge of cancellation, Ralph found innovative ways to keep the program going.
He was one of the guys that would help me go find money. they go do things, go with, he and Jim Perkins. And Ralph was always that consummate gentleman. He was always straight arrow. You never had to worry where Ralph was coming from. If you asked him to do something, he said, I'll get it done, take it to the bank. Just let it happen. He's the kind of a guy that just was kind of behind the scenes most of the time, but out there every day helping make something happen. If I said I had to have more money, he would go to the advertising budget, and he and Jim Perkins would come up with another $1 million or $2 million. If it was, how to work the people, around the rest of the sales organization to get them on board, so they're throwing hand grenades at us. He was the kind of guy that could do that.
His PR skills had to be used now to convince management that Corvette was more than just a car for GM, but a marketing engine that drove all of its product lines.
One of the most visible things that he did, though, was that magazine covers, because people think, yeah, Corvette, yeah, you get cover maybe once a year and so forth. And Ralph went out and started digging into that.
Well, I had all the people in the room that were the decision makers. I said, would anyone like to venture a guess as to how many magazine covers Corvette has had since 1953, since its inception? Well, you had guys that say, 150, we've had 225, we've had 300, So all of a sudden flashed it on the screen and had a collage of magazine covers. And you could have heard a pin drop in the room. And there was over 800 magazine covers. Nobody's ever come close to that. I don't care if you're talking about Mustang or anybody, a Camaro, it just doesn't happen.
That's what Ralph says. That's why the car, it is the iconic symbol for Chevrolet. People may come into the Chevrolet dealership and look, because the Corvette's there, new one's there, so they could look at it, but then they might buy a minivan or a Silverado or a Malibu or whatever. But he's the one that kind of engineered that thought process.
It's funny how success has many fathers, failure has one. We had a bunch of guys, around that room. Oh yeah, great. I'm very supportive of that. I always hated the thought of having to see that go away. And that kind of conversation. But we got the car. We got the C5, phenomenal car, and it led to all these better things that came along afterward.
Ralph's commitment to Chevrolet, and in particular the Corvette, through some very, very rocky times in the Corvette's history, were absolutely crucial to the survival of the car. We would not be where we are today with the C7 if it wasn't for the work that Ralph had done with certainly the 4th gen, the Corvette Challenge, and the 5th gen introduction.
When the National Corvette Museum was just an idea from the NCRS, Ralph came to the rescue again, finding ways to connect the museum to media events at the Corvette assembly plant.
At some point, we had a press event over at the plant. Had the press guys on 2 or 3 big buses that they thought they were headed out to a meal someplace. And if you know media guys, food is always uppermost in their mind. So I said, no, hey guys, we're gonna take a little detour here. We're gonna swing into this what was then a dead end little street out here. And gee, there's moan that occurred, oh my gosh, what's Kramer gonna do now? So we pull up there, and here's Zora Duntov, at the controls of this bulldozer, throttle going blah, 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 and the smoke was coming out the top of the bulldozer. And so, okay, now guys, we want you to get out because we're going to have Duntov, scrape some of this Kentucky dirt here, and this is going to be sort of like the groundbreaking for this museum we're going to build right over there on that hill. And I go over and pick up a handful of rocks and put them in my pocket. And pretty soon, some of the press guys are over there picking up rocks. And I'm thinking, this is gonna work. I mean, this museum is gonna make it. These guys are so captivated by the whole idea that that is gonna happen the way it is here, that they're actually going doing what press guys never do, which is show some emotion.
He's kind of the epitome of the enthusiastic Corvette person. His early plans on the Corvette Museum, he was right at the core beginning of it, continues to be a very excellent public relation person for Corvette, and especially for the Corvette Museum.
For his innovation, his drive, and dedication to promoting Corvette back then and now as one of its very best spokesmen, we proudly welcome Ralph Kramer into the Corvette Hall of Fame.